So there are scrolls from way after as well, but they're still ancient artifacts. They're still considered the Dead Sea Scrolls. If you look to the left, the water you see, that's the Dead Sea. But we're veering away from it. We'll be back, don't worry. Are you guys open for one more Benny 2019 translation of something?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Let's see, what shall we do? I know. I mentioned this earlier, so I said I would do it. I forgot about that. Okay, I'm going to go to the book. Well, no, let's ask a trivia question, then we'll go there anyway. I mentioned many times already that the Jewish people have a book in the Bible, and it's called the Jewish Prayer Book. Do you guys remember what book that is? Ah, very good. You guys are listening.
You sounded shocked.
No, I'm kidding. I can't tell you how many times I've said stuff and then I've repeated it. I said, you guys remember? People just look at me. It's specifically this drive, just because everyone just starts passing out. And I completely understand my voice and, the long drive. The combination is lethal. But, okay, so you got it, so we'll do it. What's going on? Psalm 23. Hold on.
Looks like those Star Wars movies, huh? Looks like we're Star Wars.
Absolutely.
This is right here.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Back there with the
so I was asked, is this the wilderness that Jesus walked in? Jesus walked everywhere. This is his land, and they had no cars, so he's been everywhere. But the desert or the wilderness of the temptation is this one right here. Specifically, if you look at Jericho, which is directly to the right, where all those palm trees are, up against the mountain over there, you see an antenna and something with like a flat top. Do you guys see that? There's, not that, but just below it is another ridge, and there's a Greek Orthodox monastery up there called Karantal. Karantal, with my American accent in Greek, is 40, means 40 in Greek. And this is the traditional spot of the Mount Temptation, where Jesus would have been tempted for 40 days. But, like I said, the Bible is very specific and says the Judean wilderness, and this whole area is the Judean wilderness. So once again, I don't argue with tradition. If the Greek Orthodox say it's there, okay, I believe you. But that's why I don't focus on where it happened, but what happens. And like Joshua mentioned, there's a few ways to look at it. You can go and worship the spot that it happened. You can try and understand the meaning of it. But the whole point of being tempted, especially if you're one who's going into ministry, is it's not until you are tempted and overcome it that, once you do that, you will never make that mistake. You're truly moving in God's works, meaning you need to be tempted to know what other people are going to be tempted with. It's only until you overcome it will you ever know what that other person is going to go through, right?
Amen.
Same concept of why Holocaust survivors a lot of times don't share their story. How could you ever understand the trauma I went through? But if they meet another Holocaust survivor, they'll gladly share it because they know the pain that I'm talking about, right? This is also a rabbinical concept of why Israel suffers so much, is how can we understand the suffering of the world of not being covenanted to God unless we suffer ourselves. So only once we suffer do we know what it means to not be covenanted to God, what the Gentile world is going through. Okay, this is what the rabbis say. But anyway, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Amen.
One second. Okay, so the reason why I chose this verse, or this Psalm 23 to talk about is, number one, I'm pretty sure everyone's read this before, or at least heard it read. And it's a very beautiful passage. But I think what King David is talking about here, there's a lot to be, there's a big lesson to learn here. And the reason why is, guys, look to the left, look to the right. When King David says, he makes me lie down in green pastures, this is what he's talking about. This is the area.
Wow.
Very green, right? Now, it's not fair. There is green here in the wintertime. I talked about all the seeds that are here. They really are there, and they do bloom in the when there's water in the wintertime. But it's still not that green. Now, I want you guys to look at the side of the mountain. You guys see all those lines on them? Can you guys see the very small lines going across, almost like tiny terracing on the side of the mountain? These are goat and sheep paths. These are what the goats and sheep will walk through here. We're going to see Bedouins on the side of the roads, and we might see some of them with their flocks as well. And if we're lucky, we'll see all the flock running across. I'm going to reference this stuff in just a moment. What King David is talking about here is a new reformation of one's mind. And this is the beauty of King David, and the wisdom of King David is a new way at looking at life, which is something we should all learn how to do. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. So this is basically the focal point of the entire, in my perspective, the entire chapter here. If you can live through this mindset, this sentence being your everyday walk, you will live a stress-free life. Okay? If you know that the Lord is your shepherd, and you don't need anything because He will provide everything for you, you'd have no worries in the world. This is what King David is talking about. It says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. Well, here you go, green pastures. Your eye and my eye both look at it and say, this man is insane. Either that or Benny is lying to me and we're not in the right place. But that's the point. If you can look at this and say, these are green pastures, that's the transformation of his mind. Because what my eyes say, I cannot survive here, God can say, you have an abundance here. Okay? We don't know that there are seeds in the ground here. Well, I do, but you guys don't know by looking at this. You don't know that the sheep, you still don't know. You don't know that the sheep can come here and survive in this area. In fact, these are grazing. This is shepherd lands right here. The sheep will come, something that's actually quite funny, if you see a sheep walking here and they graze, they take big chunks out of the dirt, and they sit there and they sift with their mouth. They spit out all the stones, all the sand, and what's left in their mouth are those little seeds that we mentioned, and then they chew on those. That's how they survive in the summertime. In the wintertime, they eat all the greenery. Okay? You saw yesterday? Yeah. That's exactly what happens here. And I think we will see some sheep. Look to the right. You see all these shrubs, all this stuff? That means there's seeds in there somewhere. So this is the path that the water takes as it falls down. Okay? So these things are all over the place. They just have more water than the rest of it. But anyway, back to Psalm 23. He makes me lie down in green pastures. I always imagine like England, Scotland, Ireland, green pastures, yeah. Not this stuff. But this is what King David's looking at. He leads me beside quiet waters and restores my soul. There is one key to surviving in this area. Find the water source. And then fight everyone else off there in order to get the water. Okay? If you live your life through the perspective of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want, you can look at this, you can call this green, and you can say there's an abundance of water in this area. There's an abundance of food in this area. Technically, there's a huge spring off to the right, and you have no idea that it's there. But there is a huge water source. Today it's called Wadi Kelt. That's the exact same riverbed that Elijah fled to and the ravens fed him in when he fled from Ahab. that's where he came. There's a lot of water there. In fact, the British even pumped the water from there. Oh, look to the left. These are Bedouins. Okay? So their main industry is sheep and goats and things like that, which is actually very lucrative. Doesn't sound like it is, but those things cost a lot of money. There's some sheep and goats and a donkey to the right. Hopefully we'll see them on the sides of the mountain here. You guys can keep your eyes out for them. I'm going to keep reading. And then it says, he guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Paths of righteousness, guys, are these goat and sheep paths that you see on the right and the left here. That's what he's referencing. The reason why he's calling it a path of righteousness is it's not always easy to walk in God's paths, right? We can look at it and say, oh man, Joshua, man, I just want a cheeseburger. I just want a bacon cheeseburger. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Or I want 3 wives. Why can't I have 3 wives? Or, whatever. There's terrible examples, but you know what I mean. It's very easy to be tempted by the world. But when you reform your mind, when you look at life through another perspective and you know that you lack nothing, God is going to provide everything for you, you can look at what looks like I'm going to fall if I take one step off this path. And in fact, a man's foot can't even fit on that path. But if you look at it through God's perspective, it looks like a highway. I cannot fall from this because it's for his name's sake that these paths of righteousness are here. It's because of him that I will succeed on this, because remember, his name is on the line. He cannot fail. If I follow his word, he will not abandon me. If I look through this perspective, I know that this highway is going to carry me in his protection, with his protection, sorry. So these paths of righteousness go from tiny goat paths to massive highways like the one we're on now. And by the way, I forgot to say, but men can't walk on that. It's only big enough for a hoof. But you'll see donkeys, you'll see camels, you'll see all these different animals literally running across the side of the mountain on these paths. But the shepherd is always down in the valley or up above on the mountaintop because they can't walk on it. Now, I have seen them on donkeys before. The donkey can walk on it and you can be on the donkey's back, but you cannot walk on the actual path itself. So that's what he's talking about. You can look at this thing and say, this is a path of righteousness. It's very hard to stay on it, but it's for his name's sake that he will keep me on it. Hold on 1 second.